Imagine you're in your 30s and you look back at your 20s wondering where all the money went. You think about the opportunities you missed and the financial decisions that derailed your progress. It's a scary thought, right? Well, what if I told you there are specific money mistakes people make all the time in their 20s that set them back for years? But here's the thing, most people don't even realize they're making them until it's too late. In today's video, I'm going to break down the biggest money mistakes you need to avoid right now before they quietly drain your future wealth. Trust me, by the end of this video, you'll thank yourself for dodging these traps. So let's get into it, starting with one mistake that almost everyone makes without even noticing. Alright, let's get into the first money mistake, a mistake that catches almost everyone off guard in their 20s. Now, you might think it's something like overspending on luxury items or dining out too much, but it's actually far more subtle than that. In fact, this mistake is often disguised as something smart, even responsible. And yet, it's one of the biggest reasons so many people find themselves struggling to get ahead financially. So, what's the mistake? It's trying to save your way to wealth. Now, before you think, wait, isn't saving money a good thing? Hear me out. Most people in their 20s think that as long as they're tucking a little bit of money away into a savings account, they're doing everything right. But here's where it goes wrong. Savings accounts are barely growing your money. The interest rates are so low that over time, inflation actually eats away at the value of your hard-earned cash. It feels safe, but in reality, it's holding you back. The real problem? You're not investing your money, and I'll explain exactly why that's the key difference in just a minute. But first, let me show you how this mistake compounds over time if left unchecked. Let's say you're saving $200 a month in your 20s, which sounds like a solid plan, right? By the time you hit 30, you might think you've built up a decent chunk of cash. But here's the catch. While that money sits in a basic savings account, inflation has been quietly chipping away at its value year after year. That $200 a month might look like it's growing, but in reality, it's barely keeping up. Now here's where things get interesting. Imagine instead of just saving, you invest that same $200 each month. Even in a conservative investment like an index fund, you could be seeing returns far higher than any savings account could ever give you. Over the same 10 years, that money could be working for you, compounding in ways that completely transform your financial future. And I'm not talking about getting rich overnight, but the difference between saving and investing can be huge by the time you're 30 or 40. But before we get into how exactly you should be investing, there's another common trap that people fall into right alongside this one. Something even more dangerous than just saving. And this mistake, it's one that feels like you're building wealth, but in reality, it's setting you up for a financial disaster. Let me explain. That next big mistake, it's lifestyle inflation. Now this one is sneaky because it creeps up on you as soon as you start earning a bit more money. You land your first decent job and suddenly the extra cash starts burning a hole in your pocket. You tell yourself, I've worked hard, I deserve to treat myself. And before you know it, you're upgrading your apartment, buying a nicer car, and splurging on things you never even thought about before. Here's the trap. It doesn't feel like a problem at first. In fact, it feels like you're rewarding yourself for your hard work. And hey, you're earning more money, so why not? But this kind of thinking leads you down a dangerous path, one where your expenses start rising just as fast as your income, sometimes even faster. And suddenly, despite earning more, you find yourself in the exact same position as before, paycheck to paycheck with nothing left over to save or invest. And the worst part, once you adjust to this inflated lifestyle, it's incredibly hard to scale back. You get used to the conveniences, the nicer things, and it becomes your new normal. But here's the thing, those small upgrades can quietly add up and drain your wealth over time. So how do you avoid it? I'll break that down in just a moment, but first, let's take a look at why so many people fall into this trap without even realizing it. People fall into the lifestyle inflation trap because as you start earning more, your idea of what's normal gradually shifts. At first, it's just upgrading your phone or getting a nicer place to live. Small changes that don't seem like a big deal. But then it's a newer car, designer clothes, or expensive nights out, and suddenly, you're living a lifestyle that matches your income rather than building wealth for the future. Here's the thing. Lifestyle inflation feels good in the moment. You convince yourself that these upgrades are a reward for all your hard work. But what you don't realize is that the more you earn, the more you spend, and the less you actually have left over for saving or investing. It's a vicious cycle that keeps you from making real financial progress, even as your paycheck grows. And here's the kicker. When an unexpected expense or life change hits, like a medical bill, a job loss, or a recession, that inflated lifestyle can come crashing down. Suddenly, the extra money you were spending on luxuries feels like a weight dragging you down. That's why avoiding lifestyle inflation is critical to long-term wealth building. But how do you keep it in check without feeling like you're depriving yourself? I'll get to that next, but before I do, there's one more massive money mistake that ties all of this together. A mistake that could be costing you tens of thousands of dollars over your lifetime without you even knowing it. Stay tuned, because this one is big. The final mistake? It's ignoring compound interest. Now, I know you've probably heard about compound interest before, but what most people don't realize is how much they're missing out on by not starting early. In your 20s, time is your greatest asset. And when it comes to building wealth, compound interest is the key that unlocks everything. Here's the shocking part. Every year you delay investing, you're losing out on thousands of dollars in future returns. Let's break this down. Say you invest just $5,000 a year starting in your mid-20s. With an average return of around 7%, by the time you hit your 60s, that money could grow into a six-figure retirement fund. But if you wait until your 30s to start, you'd need to invest double that amount each year just to catch up. And here's where it gets even crazier. Most people don't realize the power of compound interest because the growth starts slow. In the first few years, it doesn't seem like much is happening. But as time goes on, your money begins to snowball, growing exponentially. The longer you let it work, the bigger that snowball becomes. And by starting in your 20s, you're giving yourself decades for that money to compound. But here's the mistake. So many people think, I'll start investing when I'm making more money, or I'll wait until I'm more financially stable. The truth? You're missing the most valuable time to let compound interest do its magic. And I'll show you just how massive the impact of starting early can be. But first, let's talk about how you can actually get started today without needing a ton of money up front. Because the biggest barrier for most people isn't the amount they can invest, it's knowing how to begin. Let me break that down next. So, how do you actually get started investing in your 20s without feeling overwhelmed or thinking you need thousands of dollars up front? This is where so many people get stuck. They overcomplicate the process, and that hesitation costs them years of potential growth. But the truth is, it's easier than you think to begin investing today, even with a small amount of money. Here's the strategy. Instead of trying to pick individual stocks or chase the hottest trends, focus on something simple and proven, like low-cost index funds or ETFs. These investments allow you to put your money into a diverse range of companies, which helps minimize risk while giving you solid returns over time. And the best part? You can start with as little as $50 or $100 a month, no matter how tight your budget is. But here's where people often get tripped up. They feel like that small amount won't make a difference. They think, what's $50 going to do for me? Well, remember what we talked about earlier. Compound interest. That small contribution now grows and compounds over decades, turning into something far bigger than you might imagine. It's not about how much you start with, it's about starting early and being consistent. And just think about this. If you make investing automatic, where a set amount of money is pulled from your account every month, you're setting yourself up for long-term success without even having to think about it. By the time you're in your 30s or 40s, you'll look back and realize just how powerful this decision was. But before we wrap up, there's one final piece to the puzzle. It's not just about where you invest your money, it's also about your mindset. And that's what I want to talk about next, the mindset shift that will help you avoid these money mistakes and set you up for financial success for the rest of your life. Let's talk about that now. The mindset shift that will transform your financial future is this. Stop thinking of money as something to spend and start thinking of it as something to grow. This may sound simple, but it's a shift that most people don't make until it's too late. The problem is, in your 20s, you often feel like you have time to catch up, that you can spend now and save later. But the truth is, every dollar you spend on unnecessary things today is a missed opportunity to build wealth for tomorrow. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't enjoy your life, far from it, but you need to strike a balance between living in the moment and investing in your future. Here's the key. Every time you get paid, before you even think about spending it, set aside a percentage for investing. Whether it's 10%, 20%, or more, the idea is to treat investing like a non-negotiable expense. It's money that you won't touch, that's dedicated to growing your wealth. This shift from a consumer mindset to an investor mindset changes everything. Instead of focusing on what your money can buy right now, you'll start thinking about what it can do for you in the long run. That's how you build wealth, slowly but surely. And once you make this shift, you'll start to see opportunities everywhere. Ways to cut back on unnecessary expenses and put that money toward your future instead. But here's the most important part. This isn't about being perfect. You're going to make mistakes along the way, and that's okay. The goal isn't to avoid every financial pitfall, but to recognize them when they happen and adjust. The sooner you adopt this growth mindset, the more prepared you'll be to bounce back from any financial misstep and keep moving forward. Avoiding money mistakes in your 20s is just the first step. Most people work their entire lives only to leave behind little to nothing for the next generation. But what if you could break that cycle and create wealth that lasts for centuries? The solution is simple. Watch the next video to learn how to build true generational wealth starting now.